Wow, what a catch! LBW, first ball.
Tremendous catch, tumbling forward.
And he's bowled.
From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell at home in London, where it's been a busy week. So I've finished my term as chair of the Cricket Writers Club, which is a body we represent all sides of the cricket media, broadcasters, photographers and writers as members. So I've got a nice bunch of flowers just behind me, which came from the club, plus a dozen bottles of fine South Australian wine. So I'd say I'll have to have a wine party at some stage. But of course, we're still not allowed to invite people into our homes. So it's going to have to be outdoors.
Nice to see they gave you a good Australian drop there, Ali. This is Alistair Nicholson from the ABC in Melbourne, filling in for the great Jim Maxwell this week. Footy season in Melbourne. Our loss to India in the Test series seems a long, long distant memory now. We've got an Australian rules football here at the moment where a world record crowd of 78,113 attended a football game on Anzac Day, which is our national day where we show our respects to our veteran servicemen. That's the biggest crowd in the world since the COVID-19 pandemic began. So we feel very lucky in Australia at the moment. We've got crowds back at the sport. Life almost seems like normal again after a very difficult 2020.
True. Lucky you, Alistair, and everybody in Australia, because in India, for the moment, by the way, I'm Charu Sharma for All India Radio. It's still COVID news everywhere, very dark and depressing. It's still a very tough situation. By the way, I'm in Bangalore and we are completely locked down, except for a couple hours in the morning where we can go out and get some supplies. But for those who seek some audiovisual relief or respite, the IPL continues to bubble along despite just a few minor ripples, which we'll talk about soon.
Well, in terms of crowds, there has been some trials of crowds at some sporting events at Wembley for football recently for the World Snooker Championship. So everyone in the UK crossing their fingers that with the rollout of the vaccine, things keep going in the right direction with that. But it's been pretty harrowing to watch what's been unfolding in India, Charu. And it's great to have you, Al, with us for this week as well. But if we look at India, let's start there this week on Stump, because the country's now recorded more than 200,000 deaths from COVID-19. It's the fourth highest death toll in the world. But there's mounting evidence that deaths are being markedly underreported. At the time of recording today, there's been a staggering 380,000 new cases in one day. And despite this, the Indian Premier League, as you say, Charu, is continuing. Now, there haven't been cases within the tournament, which is taking place in a biosecure bubble, but some overseas players have started to leave because of travel restrictions that their own countries are putting in place. And Indian spinner R. Ashwin has withdrawn in order to support his own family in India. Well, later in the show, we'll hear from AJ Tye, one of those overseas players who has left the competition. He's gone back home to Australia. But first on Stump, let's speak to BCCI General Manager of Cricket Operations and former CEO of Delhi Capitals, Dhiraj Malhotra. Dhiraj, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks for having me.
Just give us the latest, Dhiraj, first on what's happening in India and at the IPL. Have you given consideration to halting the tournament given the COVID situation?
We are monitoring the situation very closely. We have assurances from the government that we would like to continue with the tournament. And again, it's a catch-22, Alison. I mean, if you look at social media, we've got both kind of reviews. We've got the positive where people are saying at least they come home, their matches happening, there's some normalcy. With the whole country being in lockdown, at least we have some kind of live sports, some kind of entertainment, which kind of takes away from reality, takes away from the gloom that the gloom and doom that's prevailing in India right now. So that's one school of thought. The other school of thought is also that, look, it is pandemic time. Should we do it or should we not do it? So it's a total catch-22. Before the tournament started, the IPL had gone to the governments. They had spoken to each state and they had assured us that, look, continue within the bio bubble. The bio bubble itself, it's done by the BCCI and by the franchises. And I mean, so far it's been good. Yes, as you said, Ashwin, he had to leave because his daughters as well as his parents, all four of them have COVID. So far, there have not been any cases reported in IPL. And I mean, sports should continue, yes. But again, you look at two views. Is it just the social dilemma or is it the sporting dilemma? So I don't know. I'm not the right person to, because I've been in sport for so long that I always feel it just gives you a very normal kind of feeling. It gives you the kind of some kind of optimism that, look, hey, normalcy is still reporting. Yes, it's bad, but it's not that bad. So, I mean, that's my personal view.
And the players are obviously in that bio bubble. They're close to it, but very removed from what's happening in India. But are you 100% confident that the bio bubble is secure? Because I'm hearing from players that whilst all staff at grounds and hotels are quarantined and part of that bio bubble, when they go to training grounds, say club grounds, university grounds, whilst public are kept away, there's staff at those grounds and they're not part of the bio bubble. Does that present a risk?
Yes, but we are testing them almost every second day. People are getting tested who are in close vicinity to the players. We're still ensuring that even those, the ground staff, anybody who needs to be there, and if there's any chance of interaction, then there's social distancing, and we're trying to follow as many norms as we could. The same that happened in Dubai last year.
Well, Dhiraj, we understand that the interim chief executive of the BCCI, Mr. Hemang Amin, sent a note to all the players acknowledging the concerns that surround the situation in India at this point of time. What is your personal guess? Do you think that more may think of leaving the overseas players, or perhaps even a couple of Indians, or do you think we've kind of settled down, as it were, and the concerns are now clearly understood and we will not see a rash of people leaving?
Unless there is some personal family issues, I don't see many people leaving right now. Also, the players who've left, they're still stuck in India. They're stuck outside the bubble because the countries are shut down. So now that you're in the country, it's the safest place to be. And, when the whole IPL thing was starting, the cases weren't that bad. We weren't sure. If you look at early March, we had the bilateral series against England, and you had the test matches, you had 50% crowds. In the T20s, you had about 60-70% crowd and then the situation just kept getting worse. And that's when we started, the rest of the series was played behind closed doors. When you look at the players, yes, they are far removed from reality, but they're also in touch. I mean, everyone's got friends or family who's been affected. So they do understand the situation. They do understand the gravity of what the country is facing. But what do you do? Even if you're sitting at home, it's, as you say, it's airborne. It's not safe. I mean, we have colonies that are locked down and people are still getting it. I personally don't feel that people would be leaving, and we'll make every effort it is to send the players back home safely if need be.
Dhiraj, you mentioned the players who have decided to leave. You say some of them are still stuck and they're outside the bubble now. What level of support are you able to provide those players?
We will keep getting them tested. They are staying in the BCCI provided accommodation, the hotels which are sanitized. So we're doing all that we can. We're also talking to the governments. Once the tournament gets over, it's easier to then to book charters, to send everyone together and get a special permission from each country to say, look, these people are coming from the bubble, completely secure and going to your country. So the chances of them spreading anything is negligible or bare minimum compared to anyone else who's just taking a commercial flight.
In Australia here, and this is the case in other parts of the world as well, the borders have been closed to India. Are you able to give assurances to players that they will be able to get back into their home countries? In Australia, for example, Scott Morrison, the Prime Minister here, has said cricketers won't be prioritised over more needy people who need to get back into Australia. How can you guarantee that they will get back here?
No, we can't. But as I said, as of now, everything is shut till the 10th of May or 15th of May. We are hoping that things would improve, that things would change. So we are hoping either because of vaccination or either because of the herd immunization or whatever the reason being. We are hoping that come mid-May, end May, the thing would have stabilized and would be actually on its way, the downward spiral, instead of increasing the way it is at the moment.
Dhiraj, the tournament overall then, in terms of the cricket on the pitch, how do you feel it's been shaping up? And we're almost sort of at the halfway stage, or at least another month to go.
And it's been some competitive cricket. I mean, no team has really run away and no team is really out of it right now. It's a pretty close pool right now, so the cricket seems to be interesting. We're also talking about hosting the World Cup this year, so there are also discussions happening there. Again, that's in October, November. We don't know what the rules would be. As of now, we're looking at ticket sales, people traveling from all over the world. But again, we don't know what the situation would be at that point of time.
Are you confident then, Dhiraj, that the BCCI can host the World Cup towards the end of this year, the T20?
Well, I hope so. I've just been nominated the tournament director, so I'm doing everything that we can to make sure that it happens. We will be doing normal scenario, COVID scenario, worst case scenario. So all that we're in talks with ICC at the moment.
Do you have a country that is earmarked as the contingency?
It would be UAE. And we are hoping it will again be done by BCCI. So we'll take the tournament there.
Dhiraj, thank you so much for joining us on Stumped. And to you and the rest of your team and in the bio bubble, do stay safe. And yeah, we send all our thoughts out to those in India who are having such a difficult time at the moment. Thanks for coming on the programme.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Alison. Bye.
So that's Dhiraj Malhotra, General Manager for Cricket Operations at the BCCI, and of course, former CEO of Delhi Capitals. Really interesting there, and good to get that confirmation that the UAE is on standby as the contingency for the T20 World Cup. But yeah, in terms of the IPL then, Charu, it's about money, isn't it? In the IPL, if it didn't make the money that it does, and if players didn't earn the money that they did, would it be genuinely carrying on for the sole purpose of giving the public a lift?
Well, it's about industry, Alison, not money. I mean, sports is an industry, and I suppose cricket's the biggest part of that industry. But industry is carrying on regardless in many, many areas, if not all areas, because it's essential to life and livelihood. Now, one part of the sporting industry, which is the IPL, is carrying on because it has the financial might to ensure that they have a secure bio bubble. So that's why they're carrying on, because there are no COVID cases there. There's no real problem, as it were, and they're able to organize themselves in a very efficient, if expensive manner. Part of the popular view, of course, is very populist at this point of time to once again hold the IPL as a soft target, because these are very dark and depressing times, and everyone's attention goes onto something that is, well, flourishing, if not thriving. And this whole concept, which I wonder if it's limited to only certain parts of the world or is there in every part of the world, is, bring things down, pull things down. What for? What is the need of the day in India? There are hospital beds, ICUs, oxygen, ventilators, vaccines, medicines. By stopping the IPL, none of that is going to be solved or sorted out. So I do think that, there's an overwhelming level of support for having such activities carry on. And if it's considered to be entertainment, which is like to be looked down upon in these dark and depressing times, if all forms of entertainment are to be stopped because we only want to show a dark screen with the newsreader saying this is the latest count, then yeah, the IPL must be stopped as well. But everything else is carrying on, Alison. Of course, there's restrictions and protocols in terms of masks and what have you, but a bio bubble is a bio bubble.
Yeah, you would support, wouldn't you, the fact of an industry, if it's able to carrying on. Al?
I think if the BCCI is going to make some financial contribution, obviously that the coffers are quite full and the IPL owners and the franchises attached to the game have plenty of money. If they can help out, then I do see the positive side of it. I think there's a danger with sport continuing if the general public doesn't necessarily understand the gravity of the situation. So if you see people playing a football game or you see cricket matches going on as normal, there is the risk that the general public won't understand the severity of the situation. I think the situation in India is at such a stage that everyone understands exactly where they are. And to have that thing to look forward to at the end of the day, I think the untold consequence of COVID-19 is going to be the mental health impact. And to have a few hours of a day where people can sit back and not think about the depressing situation that they're in and enjoy a good game of cricket, I do think that's a genuine positive. The power of sport in bringing people together, giving people a sense of purpose and something to connect with, I think that's very important during what's a difficult time over there.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
So, well, it is really important for those players who are at the IPL. I mean, they have the individual choice and they must feel safe to stay. Let's get a player's perspective, because Australian AJ Tye was signed to the Rajasthan Royals this season, but earlier this week he was one of the ones who decided to leave the competition to fly home. I caught up with him when he landed and asked him about that decision and the process of leaving.
Yeah, it was a swift one. I was chatting with my wife on Friday, and she was updating me with the sort of scenario that was happening in Australia and in Perth, and the state governments were cutting arrival numbers and wanting to lock out guests or people coming from India. And with that, it made a pretty easy decision for me that I didn't want to get stuck in India. So I just spoke to my franchise and they were lucky enough to get me a flight, and I hopped on the next flight I could.
How safe or otherwise had you been feeling inside that IPL bubble?
Inside the bubble is incredibly safe. They do everything they possibly can. They get the staff to live in the hotel while we're there. They get tested regularly and have to isolate before being in contact with us. So yeah, inside the bubble, it's incredibly safe and we're very well looked after. But yeah, it's just the craziness of what's going on outside of it that we get incredibly well sheltered from. That's a bit harrowing.
Yeah, we were hearing from David Malan last week from the IPL, and he was just describing that strange psychology of being almost sort of hermetically sealed from these horrors that were going on outside. And that can almost have a different sort of psychological impact on a player.
Yeah, almost cut off. Like, yeah, it's weird. Like I found it in a way that I sort of lost touch with the outside world, and you can drive through the streets and not see any of it, but then you look on the news and you can see what's happening, and it's just stark comparison to what you're actually seeing, and you don't hear much about it inside the bubble. No one really talks about it, but yeah, it is a bit confronting at times.
What of the other players then that you've spoken to about their feelings about remaining at the IPL? Yeah,
there's been thoughts and a lot of conversations about people thinking to leave and wanting to, and we saw from Rajasthan, Liam Livingstone left last week as well. Yeah, those conversations are rife, and we're sort of asking questions as well as the internationals as why wasn't it held in Dubai again this year.
AJ, good luck. Thanks for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alison. I really appreciate it.
So that was Australian bowler AJ Tye, who's been with the Rajasthan Royals. He hadn't played a game for the Royals this season. Maybe that also helped to make the decision slightly easier to leave. But Alistair, AJ's the third Australian to leave the IPL. He was followed by Adam Zampa and Kane Richardson. And clearly he got out in time with that ban now on passenger flights to Australia from India.
Clearly, AJ's made a decision that he didn't feel he was likely to be able to get easily back into Australia. And I think people underestimate the difficulty of living away as a cricketer for a long period of time. And the bubble life has accentuated that as well. You're not seeing family and you're not able to go about your usual business as you would. So I understand his decision to return home. The situation here in Australia is that he's probably lucky he did leave when he did. They're not going to prioritise cricketers. They're over there as subcontractors, essentially. They're operating in isolation. My understanding, there are 8,000 Australians in India at the moment who want to get home but can't, and 650 of those are listed as vulnerable. So in terms of priorities, I think the vulnerable are going to be put ahead of those cricketers who want to come home.
Well, that's it for this week's Stumped here on All India Radio. Don't forget you can stay in touch with us throughout the week. Just follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport. Make sure you use the hashtag BBC Stumped so we see your comments. My thanks to Charu, Sharma and Alistair Nicholson. Do stay safe and we'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.